It's January the 25th, 2017. I'm up here in this nice bit of woods, which is well, nobody walks through this bit of woods. So this makes for quite a nice example of tracking. We've got a good time of the year for tracking because we've got a low sun, which means that the ground, any kind of disturbance on the ground gets highlighted by the rays of the sun coming in and hitting those little bumps and kind of disturbances, so you get to see them nicely. And also the fact that today is a nice bright day, so you've got a good amount of light conditions for tracking. One of the things here we've got, which is I like to show, is difficult to show on camera, but we've got running through here and through this bit here, this track, the trail. This is not a run, this is a trail. There's also disturbance here in terms of we've got a lot of scrabbling amongst the moss. This stuff has all been scrabbled up, so obviously something here. Moving on here as well, we've got scrabbling here and here and here, all the way through here, evidence of disturbance. And of course the nice thing when you're kind of learning this art is that, of course, being that we haven't got human interference in this bit, that we're not having to deal with kind of great clomping footprints of human beings disturbing what there is of other animals. So you know that this is an animal other than human causing this. So this is a track or trail leading through, and it's heading in this direction over here, towards the more open bit. My Labrador dog, which you might just see over there in the corner. And of course, when it's a trail, this will mean that animals are quite conservative beings when they come to their use of paths, and many species will use the same trail, so it becomes like a super highway. So we've got probably quite a few animals in here making its way through. The scrabbling amongst this moss will be squirrel. These are squirrels looking for their winter food stores, which they bury in the ground during the year and then come back to them at this time of year when other food sources are exhausted. Moving through, whatever else evidence? Well, we've also got rubs here, and this one is an unintentional rub against this tree here as well. These roots here, they look like they've been scuffed and rubbed, polished, and other bits you'll see, we'll move on through, other bits you'll see a bit more of a polish on the tree. This will be badger moving through. Badger is a fairly low slung animal, belly quite close to the ground, and as it rubs over over things like tree roots and over fallen branches, particularly when you're dealing with a trail, you'll find the evidence of that trail, of that rub along that trail. So you've got badger going through here. Now on these brambles, would also be looking for if it was badger, because unlike something like a fox, badgers tend to be like nature's bulldozers. They haven't got much of a worry in terms of predators. They're still a shy animal, but they will bulldoze their way through the growth. They've got thick skin and thick hair, so they don't feel all these scratches, and so they'll pile through brambles like this, and you're looking for the telltale little hairs, kind of white or dark hairs from badger. So you can see back. I can see more with my eye than you can see with the camera, but there is a very noticeable line walking through here. Turns, becomes a bit more disparate, but you can see it turns around the tree, and then at this point they begin to fan out a bit. Now the reason why I know this is badger, I know there's a badger set within about 100 yards over there, across the other side of the clearing. So we've got badger in here. What we also got in here, we've got more than we used to. We've got quite a bit of roe deer, at least one buck, quite a few does, in here. I had wondered if they'd been driven off a bit by the forestry in here, but they've been quite resilient. I've seen one doe quite recently, only about 40 or 50 yards away from where I'm standing at the moment. So they will use that track. Now, there is no reason why they couldn't use any other bit of this woodland to come through, but like it's talking about the conservativeness of animals, they just go with what they know, and so they'll follow the same track again and again. And humans will become the makers sometimes of highways, i.e. that say humans will create a path by walking through something again and again and again, and then when the humans aren't there, like in the evenings and night times, the animals then will use exactly the same path. And it's quite common that you'll see prints on a track made by humans through woods like this, then that belong to a lot of species like deer, badger, rabbit, stuff like that. And if sheep are left out as well, I mean, we get up here, we get sheep into the woods quite commonly. They will do exactly the same thing. So there's a domesticated animal that's doing exactly the same thing, which is using these kind of, we can call them paths of desire. You know, these you move them through a territory where the easiest line to get through is the one that's used all the time, and then all the animals tend to use them. So this is a trail, okay? Not so much use if you're actually trapping, because of course you can't guarantee what animal you're going to trap in that trail. So you'd be looking for other ways of capturing that animal. Primarily, if it's things like a rabbit, you'd be looking for a run. Run is species specific, where you can just about guarantee that you're getting the animal that you are after. But what a trail is useful for is just working out what is in the area and the likely areas they are going to be. Now, if we move up, okay, I'm still following this trail. Like I said, it gets a bit diffuse here. And you can still see evidence on the side of this tree here, kind of unintentional rubbing as they've gone over the side of the tree, which suggests still you're dealing with badger. And then we're just walking around the still trail, you can see, up through this bit here, just between this stump here and here. You can see evidence of the ground of moss being pulled up. You can also just see there's a huge amount of prints in here. I mean, if I was to show you this bit here, there's an enormous number of prints just all over this, because of what the season we've had little rain really since Christmas. It's just been very still, so the thing that destroys prints, of course, is rain or snow. If you had a lot of snow on the ground and then it's melted off, of course that will destroy any kind of prints underneath. But we've had remarkably little, so really you get to see an enormous amount of prints. And here you've got an ideal scenario, which is that you can see from the shadows of the trees the sun coming in at the angle low down, and then you'll get to see all the little humps and bumps, marks, the signs left by the animals coming through here. It also is good to note that we kind of understand animals to be nocturnal, but actually the majority of animals that we are kind of interested in tend to be operating around about dawn and dusk. You're thinking like deer are very much a crepuscular animal, which is that they are feeding around about the dawns and feeding around the dusk times. They're not nocturnal. You also think about fox. Now fox of course is a nocturnal animal, but will also feed, exhibit those crepuscular activities where they'll be around dawn, around dusk time. You'll hear them as well if it's a fox. Foxes have specific calls depending on what they're doing. Of course, people who live in cities have become much more used to vixens calling at certain times when they're in season. But the male fox will also make bark noises that are very obvious noises at night. And of course, a fox will, outside of the breeding season, foxes will be just out and sleeping in the brush. They don't sleep in dens unless the vixen is about to have cubs, always with cubs. Just like deer will do exactly the same thing. You'll see a lay or a bed, which is where, particularly with deer, quite a noticeable area of compressed vegetation, usually within a kind of a deep, fairly secure area for them, where they'll be able to hear if something is trying to come up onto them. And of course, the deer being quite a big animal, you get to see much more of the bed that they've made. We've also got lays. Those are kind of less time spent in a lay than in a bed. Badgers, again, because what a badger does, it's quite a, like I said, it's quite a rambunctious animal, quite a big, kind of large, heavy animal. Particularly when the cubs are coming in out of the den, they do a lot of playing, and you'll see, particularly just over here, the right time of the year, you go and stand by their den, and you'll see where the cubs have been out in the night time, and they just made a huge kind of flattening of the grass where those cubs have been. You also find, I found this quite often, which is that with badgers particularly, I think they like the warmth of the roads in the summertime. I used to do a lot of running at nights, kind of around about midnight time, and the number of times you'd come around a bend and you'd come across a family of badger out on the road, just milling around. And I think the tarmac, I think, just holds the kind of heat after the day, and of course they've been in all day, and they come out and they'll go and sit on the road. One or two times I've had quite close calls with badgers, because I tend to run, if it's a night where it's fairly light with a good moon, I'll run without a head torch, and the number of times you come around the corner and badgers are fairly difficult to see in the dark because of course their colour, and you're just suddenly presented with something that's been equally as surprised as you are, and turns and tries to bite your leg off before disappearing into the hedgerow. And I have to say, it gets the heart racing when that happens, because a male badger could be easily 20 kilograms. I think the largest one that's ever been found is almost 30 kilograms. Well, that's half my body weight, and it's certainly got sharper teeth than I've got. So yes, anyway, we were moving through this kind of woodland area. As we're getting more to this open area, I think what happens is that this used to be enclosed, and there was a track that went straight across, but now they've had this forestry happen. The trail kind of spreads out, and they take various routes across this, for them, not challenging, but it's not as easy as it used to be, terrain to get to their den on the other side. So here we haven't got a trail anymore. We've just got a whole collection of signs and little tracks that then I suspect they move across the this open ground over to the den. I have had a look to see if I can find a trail across. There's no obvious one one that went straight across. There's a stream running down there, and there was a great trail that went straight across there. You could see it quite a lot, and it was a good place to find quite a lot of animal signs. But since all this tree felling is done, it's been a little bit difficult to find. This tree behind me, this one here, is a lovely tree. It's got a very kind of interesting shape to it. Was struck by lightning years and years and years ago. It's an old oak. It has got a very, very kind of emblematic shape to it. It's a beautiful thing. I'm glad that when they were doing the tree felling, they didn't decide to cut this one out. They just left it. It is quite stunning in its way. I kind of christened it Herne the Hunter because it's kind of got the look of something quite almost kind of ritualistic about it. I always feel sorry for these poor broadleaf trees when you see them in plantations, because they get swallowed up by the quicker growing fir trees, and after about 20 years or so they really do struggle to survive. And then of course when after about 30 years you'll get the felling of these trees around it, and they get a second lease of life, and you see them, it's almost like pit ponies. They put on so much leaf in the next season, all over the trunks, all the way from the bottom right to the top of the trees. And the only trouble they've got is that because they've tried to reach the light, which is being drowned out by the trees, they've gone very long and gangly, but also being protected from the winds by the trees around it. So when they're kind of open to the elements like this, you'll see a lot of them struggle to maintain actually staying upright. So anyway, I'm kind of walking down the bottom here. This is, like I said, you can see the amount of you probably can't see much when I turn that way because the sun kind of gets behind me, but yeah, this area has been very much opened up by tree felling. It'll be interesting to see how this reacts to this spring in terms of what will grow up. I suspect you'll get a lot of willow herb growing, which tends to grow in situations like this. Very newly disturbed ground. It tends to be one of the first colonizers of ground like this. Foxglove as well is another one that you'll see quite a lot of growing in here. So yes, it's a great day for getting out there and just seeing what's out there in the woods. We don't see a lot of this nowadays just because none of us will go out at those times of the day and sit quietly just to see what comes past. We kind of seem to rely more on wildlife programs than we do about actually going out there. And it's getting into tracking is, I think, therapeutic even. It has a purpose to it also. It's a useful thing for hunting, but also the idea of tracking an animal, getting to understand how an animal moves through its territory, if it has one, and also how just animals move biomechanically as well is an interesting thing, because not all animals, of course, walk the same. Different species of animals will walk differently, like a deer. The way a deer walks is what we call a diagonal walk, which is that it tends to move front leg and then its back leg in an alternate way, which is why when you're tracking deer you will sometimes come across prints that where the front leg's print is then covered by the print of the back leg, because it will sometimes fall into the print of the front leg, and that's if it's walking. Now that's called direct register, where you get that. If you think about my stick there, that's the kind of the this front paw, and then as the animal comes over, so then the back leg covers the front as well. You can also, with deer, because not all deer do actually direct register, they'll be slightly to one side, either the rear leg or the print will be slightly either inside or the outside of the back leg. You can actually have a go at determining, for a start, the size of the creature you are tracking in terms of the deer, in terms of the distance between the track from the front to the rear, but also you can tell the sex, supposedly. The sex of a deer, because unusually, or quite usually, because it applies to humans as well. And actually here, and as luck would have it, here we've got, just down here, I'm just going to try and get down close because we've got a small deer print just on the floor here, and I shall try and get you so you can see it. So this one just here, there we go, that is a small deer, and you can see little the two-toe of the deer, that's fairly small, a little kind of heart-shaped bit at the back suggesting that's a roe. I've been tracking this small one for quite some time, and this one has moved down into here, and I think it moved up along this trail here. Now when you're tracking, quite obviously it makes sense not to stare directly at your feet when you're tracking, because there's no point tracking something that's staring at you in the distance thinking, why is that person moving towards me with their head staring at his feet. So the old attitude about you begin to think like the animal you're tracking is very pertinent, because you begin to get an eye in what an animal will do. You get to understand how an animal thinks about the territory it's moving through, and you have that kind of sympathetic relationship with the animal, or empathetic relationship with the animal, then you can make judgments as to what an animal might have done after you've picked up a certain number of tracks. So for instance, I know this animal probably came up into this track, and it's not likely to have stepped off into this area here, because it's not for a deer that's too enclosed. It will likely have carried along the path, or have turned around and gone back. It might equally have hopped over this fence, which is very little barrier to a deer. This fence is only about 3.5 foot high. I've seen deer jump over things twice that height with comparative ease, and may have gone off into the field for grazing. Particularly this time of year, they'll go out into these open grass areas for grazing. There's not a huge amount in the woods at the moment, a little bit, but not a massive amount. So yes, you begin to think, and so you, rather than staring at your feet and moving along like that, going, there's another print, there's another print, there's another print, you kind of pick a print up, and then you make a value judgment as to where you think you'd be following this animal. Anyway, what I was saying about understanding not only the size of the animal, but the sex of the deer, is it a buck or is it a roe? When you're tracking a deer and you've got, say, the 4 prints, like front right, front left, back right, back left. Now in a buck, because quite a few of the deer species have sizable antlers, like you think about the red deer, classic example of a big, largest deer we have in this country. A huge set of antlers come out, that's a weight to carry, so they'll have big neck muscles, but also they'll be big chested. So when your tracks will show that by the fact that usually the front legs print will be on the outside of any back leg prints, because they'll have a wider chest, so that'll make for a wider front leg print. With a doe, it's therefore the reverse is true, because a doe is all about giving birth, and so just like in humans, women have a wider pelvic exactly the same in deer. It's allow for birthing. So in a doe will show that on the ground by usually the rear prints will be on the outside of the front prints. It's not always the case, but it's a very good rule of thumb. So that gives you what the species, the sex of the animal you are trying to track. Now also, one of the more interesting aspects is knowing the age of the track you're trying to track, because there's no point following a track of a species that was there sometime last month, particularly when we're in this neck of the woods, primarily because the territories here tend to be quite large or transient. We used to get quite a lot of deer moving through the area, not actually living in this territory, but actually just moving through from bits of woodland to other bits of woodland. I'm trying to remember now, there was I can't remember what species of animal, but one of these programs on the oh yes, it was a fox. One of these spring watch programs, they put a transceiver onto a fox, and the transceiver stopped working when the fox had got 140 miles it had travelled in a week, and that was in a kind of, wasn't just 140 miles round and around in the circle, but 140 miles across the south of England. So it's probably good to know the age of the track. So how do you do that? Well, the only way of doing that is through experience. One way you can do it is to go out into the woods and dig up, say, a small bit of ground. Doesn't have to be that big, say, a foot wide and a foot long. Dig it up, disturb it, tread on it up, let it back down into the hole you made, and then just make a series of lines through that disturbed ground of increasing depths. Go from kind of a gentle, very gentle scrape through to a kind of one that kind of goes in by a centimetre. Okay, and then go away and come back in, say, an hour, and see how that's changed. Go again, come back in, say, another 3 hours, and just observe how that soil changes as it ages. Then you begin to get a feel for how track ages through time in your particular area of the wood. Now, of course, if you're doing a lot of tracking and you're an experienced tracker, then you'll begin to understand quite unconsciously how that track, or the kind of age of that track, because you unconsciously know from the look of it how long it's been probably since that animal has passed that way. Tracking is a real science. Actually, in one of the universities in Princeton, university in the States, it's part of the Freshers Week leadership course that they use. And they take the kids out and show them outdoor skills, and one of them is tracking. The idea being that this gives them a sense of leadership, a sense of responsibility, and a sense of becoming more of an all-rounded adult. So yeah, this winter time is a really interesting time for tracking. It's great to get out, equally the animals, because they're very fixated on feeding this time of year. The ones who aren't sleeping, then gone. Now, why was I doing that? I was doing that because this Labrador dog, one of the things that most dog owners know is that they will, when they find fox excrement, they will rub it on themselves by doing what she's doing there. Now, there's an upside to that, there's an outside to that. The outside is that it just shows me that back there is where a fox has just marked out its territory, and I know there's a fox territory along this fence line because I found evidence for fox scat further down. So I think this fence line is the edge of a fox territory because it's been laying down what foxes do. They've got secretion glands either side. It's really disgusting stuff, this. They've got secretion glands either side of their anus. And what happens within those those glands, it takes in kind of bacteria and kind of makes them, ferments them. It's lovely stuff, this. And then as they poo onto the ground, it's mixed in with their excrement, and so that's why fox scat is really incredibly pungent. You can smell it from a couple of about 5 or 10 yards away before you get to it. And of course, if a dog rubs itself into it, then you've got a fairly smelly dog. But that's a dog. That's a fox marking out its territory. That's the reason for it, which is why you'll find them on stumps. And it's the way that they make them open so that people other animals can smell it. It gets wafted off the wind. Now, what's interesting here? I mean, one of the things you can do is trap your dog. My dog has just gone through, and so I'm just going to turn you down here. There we go. That is a classic dog print. Okay, front paw. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4. Of course, animals have started with all based on this kind of idea of 5 fingers. And of course, what's happened is that one, our thumb, on something like a dog, has disappeared up the leg. This one's come their dew claw. Okay, so now they've got 4. So that's what you're seeing on the ground here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now the difference between this, say, and a fox is that the line of these 2 pads here, okay, these 2 pads here, is further forward. And now if you draw a line across, you'll see that they're further forward of the back ends of the 2 front pads here, and that makes it obvious a dog track. Now, of course, domesticated dogs aren't the only dogs we have. If we were in the States, for instance, you've got things like coyote and stuff like that, which is also a dog. And although I've never tracked a coyote, you can tell the difference between a coyote because in a domesticated dog, the inner claw, the inner pad, this one, is slightly smaller than that one, the outer pad. In a coyote, this one is the bigger one and that one is the smaller one. So there's a slight difference. Also, the difference between a dog and a cat, for instance, is that the dog species always has their claws shown. So whenever you see a dog print, you'll always see evidence of the claw sticking in. A cat, you look at the way your cat walks. If you've got a domesticated cat, they retract their claws, and so a normal cat print won't show any claw marks. And of course, that translates into things like lion and leopard and cheetah and things like that. They all will walk without their claws out. There's also a difference in how the animal walks. If you look at a dog, for instance, see how your dog walks. It's different from how a badger walks. A badger walks the same way as a dog does. Some are diagonal walkers, some are bounders, some are pacers, and that's only when they're kind of walking normally. And of course, some animals will go through a variety of them as the speed increases. What's interesting, when you look at a dog, the front claw has disappeared up the leg, become the dew claw. So you've got the 5th, which is what we call a thumb, on a dog on the front leg. But in a deer, you've got 2. They're called nail walkers because they actually walk on their nails. What they're doing is they're walking on this bit. You're kind of on the fingernails. That's why they're called nail walkers. And of course, all the other claws toes have disappeared on the front, but on the back leg on a deer, somebody showed me a stupid picture, we're thinking. This one has actually gone up, and this one have gone up the legs. And this only shows itself when some deer run. When they run, because of the way they hit the ground, the force their back leg in more, and these two will actually show up as two little points on the ground with these two kind of splayed, so you get that. And you'll know that's the back leg from a deer by the point of these two little points on the ground of those two extra toes that have disappeared up the back legs. It is an absolute fascinating subject. Endless amounts of things to understand and to learn, and has a very real value in understanding how other animals live, and understanding what there is and around the world around us. Has also understanding, if you do become a hunter, and you are catching things for to eat, then these skills become a vital part of your itinerary. Hopefully we'll do a bit more, because hopefully during this winter period, because of the conditions, we're going to get some good light levels, and we can go out and do a bit more. Particularly, I like tracking deer. I want to do a bit more tracking some of the deer through this bit of woodland.